Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation about a very critical topic. My name is Lori Higgins, and I'm the Bureau Chief at Chalkbeat Detroit, and I'm also a longtime education reporter. We are so grateful to be partnering with the University of Michigan Poverty Solutions, which has done a lot of important research on student homelessness. Chalkbeat is a nonprofit newsroom covering public education in 8 places around the country, including Detroit. We believe that every child deserves access to a quality education and that our journalism and community engagement can help drive positive change. I'm going to get us started I'm going to turn this over to Andrew Morton. He's an award-winning playwright and theater maker who creates socially engaged theater with and for vulnerable populations. He is going to show us a snippet of a film that he's working on. Sofa Stories Detroit is a community arts project using live theater and digital media to amplify the stories of young Detroiters who have experienced homelessness or housing insecurity. So Andrew, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you all today. As you heard, I am here to talk a little bit briefly about Sofa Stories Detroit and show you a little sample of our work, but I'm thrilled to be here in such great company. So Sofa Stories Detroit is a project that started in late 2019 with the desire to use live performance and theater to amplify the stories of young Detroiters who've experienced homelessness or housing insecurity. Even during the challenges of COVID that we all experienced over the last few years, we were able to safely produce our in-person performances of the project over the last few months in the summer in various locations in Detroit. Essentially, our project was solo monologues that were performed by professional actors, and the monologues were developed in collaboration with young people from the Detroit Phoenix Center, some of whom you'll hear from a little bit later today. And then our actors performed those monologues on sofas to audience members sitting across from them on a sofa as well. The idea being that the sofa being a kind of visual kind of connecting thread through the pieces, where representing the fact that many of us know that many young people who experience housing insecurity may resort to couch surfing or doubling up on a friend's sofa to provide them, a place to sleep or shelter for a short or prolonged period of time. So the excerpt that you're going to see today is from a work in progress, the first of a series of short films that we are in the process of creating that we hope to be able to stream online in November during National Youth Homelessness Awareness Month. In this monologue, you're not going to see, or this film, you're not going to hear the entire piece because of time, but it touches on an issue that I think will come up in the conversation today. Many of the challenges that we're facing young people experiencing housing insecurity during COVID. So in this monologue, the character that you meet in the earlier beginnings of the piece talks about the challenges of living in a hotel with her mom and younger sister. And towards the end of the clip, which you're going to see right now, you'll hear kind of some of the various kind of pressures and stress that that she is experiencing. So thank you so much for letting us be part of this great event today and for sharing our work. And as I said, we'll have more films coming out in the next few weeks, and I'll be sure to make sure I put the linked into the chat for more information about our project if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing and how you can get involved. So I'm going to share my screen now to see the little clip of the film and enjoy.
My mom and I have been arguing a lot lately. And I know she is trying her very hardest, but we've been here for 6 months. And it's not one of the worst places, but I just want my own room, my own alone time, my privacy away from my sister. Like, I love my sister, but she is just so annoying sometimes. My mom comes here late from work. She tries to be quiet coming in thinking that we're asleep. My sister usually is, but I'm not. I just can't fall asleep until I know she's back safe with us. She comes in and sits at the edge of the bed, takes her shoes off quietly, and sometimes I see the reflection of her in the mirror. and she looks tired, but mostly she just looks sad. My sister the other day, she asked if we were homeless. And I didn't know what to say in the moment. I just said no, that we have a home. It's just, we have to wait a little longer for it. And I never told my mom, and I won't. She just got enough to worry about already.
So thank you, everyone. That was a clip from the first film that we've created in our short film series called A Little Longer. As I said, we'll be creating more of short films of select monologues from our project, and we'll be making those available for people to watch online in the next few weeks. So thank you, everyone, and I'll pass things back to Laurie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was really great and powerful. And I'm really looking forward to hearing and seeing more of the videos that you guys have done. I'm going to get started with the panel discussion by introducing our panelists. This is a good time for them to turn their cameras on. First up is Jennifer Erb-Downward. She's a senior research associate at Poverty Solutions at the University of Michigan. Next up, we have Courtney Smith. She's founder and CEO of the Detroit Phoenix Center. We have Azaria Terrell. She's a 17-year-old high school senior at Pershing High School. We have Iranetta Wright, Deputy Superintendent of Schools at the Detroit Public Schools Community District. And finally, we have Terrence George, who is Superintendent at Covenant House Academies. So I'll get started with a question for Jennifer. In that video that we just heard, the young lady mentioned her sister asking, "Are we homeless?" And I think this is a good time for us to really ground the conversation with a definition of what it actually means to be a student who is experiencing homelessness. So Jennifer, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to start with, because the reality is, as many people have heard, there are different definitions of homelessness that are used by different organizations. So when we're talking about homelessness from an educational perspective, the federal act, McKinney-Vento Act, defines that as any child in K through 12 or early education who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. And so this includes children who are living temporarily in a hotel or motel that they're paying for out of pocket. It includes children who are living doubled up in another person's housing as a result of economic hardship or loss of housing. And these, again, are temporary situations. And the reason that that definition is really important to sort of focus on is because what the research shows is that from an educational perspective, it's really the instability that children are experiencing that has educational consequences. And it's also the instability that we can address in many ways. We can figure out as a school system, how do we support children better through this period of time until, like the clip said, until there is that permanent home.
Can you then talk a little bit, Jennifer, about the research that you guys have done? You just released a data book recently on identification of students who are homeless in Detroit. Tell us a little bit about your findings and why these findings are so critical to helping students.
So the biggest finding that really is important to recognize is that under-identification of children experiencing homelessness is a huge issue in Detroit. It's actually a huge issue in Michigan. It's a huge issue across the entire United States. But I can speak to this specifically in Detroit. We looked at data from 2017-18, and what we found was that about 2% of students in Detroit were being identified by schools as homeless or housing unstable in these situations. And that compares to survey data. The city that same year found 16% of families with children under the age of 18 were reporting that they were either evicted or forced to move in the last year. And other data came out and showed that 14% of middle and high school students in Detroit Public School reported homelessness in one school year. So there's a real disconnect between those numbers. And the reason that that's important is because homeless students have specific educational rights. And when we can help them access those rights, then we can help ensure that they really truly have the right to an education. But if they're not identified, they're not going to be receiving those supports. It's the outcomes then educationally can be very challenging.
Okay, so before we get into a deeper discussion about how schools can better identify students, I want to hear from Azaria, because I think that she can provide us with a real life perspective on why this is so important. So Azaria, we talked a little bit last week about this, and I'm just hoping that you can give us a sense of what you want educators to know about your own experience and why that experience needs to be told.
Yes, of course. Well, first things first, it's a great opportunity to get to speak like this, because there's a lot of youth just like me who go through a lot of hard and difficult situations at home, and they don't get the chance to speak about it. Although, yes, the government knows and people know there are children out there suffering at home, but they haven't heard it directly from the child's mouth, how it's affecting them in their mental health, if they're suffering from depression, and how it's really affecting their lives, not just how it is in school. I think this helps me a lot, because being able to talk about it, I know sometimes talking about it helps, but it's not really sometimes a situation that the youth needs help with. It's like the youth maybe doesn't understand what exactly they're going through, and they need just clarification that if this is normal, maybe because maybe they've grown their whole life this way, and they think this is how their life is meant to be, so they don't have like exact information on it. So this is truly important, because if more youth know that there is actually help being given in their situation, then this can change their mindset on their current living situation, and it won't make them feel as bad or sad about what they're currently going through.
And tell us a little bit about your own experience and what helped you, or who helped you.
My own experience dealing with homelessness and housing security is it's been many days where I've been at school and I'm thinking, like, well, I know there's not hot water at home, or times is tough and there's no heat, and I know it's going to be tough as soon as I get home. And 4 years ago, before I had found the Detroit Phoenix Center, it was kind of difficult. And my dad, he is a single father, and he's worked so hard to make sure that our life is as normal as it can possibly be. But, you can only get so far. And we really managed to, sometimes during those hard months when we may have not had heat or anything, we've managed to just really get through it, with blankets or heaters. We found a way to really push through it. Ninth grade year, 2019, when I did find Detroit Phoenix Center and I did talk to Miss Courtney and them, I did go through some hardships from freshman year, where it was tough at home, or I was kicked out, or I needed help with something. And Miss Courtney and Detroit Phoenix Center was the people who lended me that support, and they gave me that help, where it was just a place to stay for a couple hours, or finances to help me get through whatever it was needed to get me through that help. They were there. And my situation has really just opened my eyes that things could have been tougher, and they are tougher for some people. So I am happy for the help that I received, and it really did help me a lot, because I feel like without it, I'm not sure how worse that situation could have gotten or how it could have affected me.
Okay, thank you so much for telling your story. That was really important, I think, for a lot of people to hear. I'm going to turn it over to Courtney to talk a little bit about, the work that the Phoenix Center does, but also about why it's so important for us to hear from young people like Azaria.
Thank you so much, Lori. And also thank you, Azaria, for your insight. It takes a lot of courage to come on a platform like this and share a part of your life with complete strangers and a lot of adults. So thank you so much for your insight. Hi, my name is Courtney Smith, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Detroit Phoenix Center. We are a high impact nonprofit organization that provides critical resources, support, and a safe, nurturing environment for youth and young adults who are experiencing housing insecurity. So one of the things that Azaria mentioned is coming to the Detroit Phoenix Center. She came to the Detroit Phoenix Center and enrolled in our SOAR after school program. What we saw was we started off as a drop-in center, just a low barrier space where a young person can just drop in, take a shower, wash their clothes, access a food pantry, have bus tickets, have recreational activities, access a computer lab. They could wash their clothes, take a shower, have food, just a continuum of services. But what we were beginning to see, which really struck me, was a lot of the young people who were coming to the drop-in center had not completed high school, right? And they were saying that they dropped out in 9th grade. Some of them dropped out early in 8th grade, and it struck me. And I remember reaching out to Jennifer a couple years ago and asking her for recommendations on after-school programs that support students that are housing insecure. And she directed me to a program in New York. And so we did a lot of research, and we adopted an evidence-based model to really support young people that are experiencing homelessness through an after-school enrichment program. We still have our drop-in model, but specifically for our teenagers, we noticed that they need a little bit more additional support. So this year we have partnered with actually the University of Michigan to have one-on-one tutoring for young people. It's a hybrid program, so we offer one-on-one tutoring. We have food, hot meals every day, Tuesday and Thursday after school for the young people to be able to drop in. We have club-based programming. So just like Andrew mentioned, they've been a partner with the Detroit Phoenix Center for 3 years now. And so in addition to the Sofa Stores project, we use theater as a tool for expression. Also, yoga is a club. They had gaming, ACT, SAT prep, and transportation assistance and wraparound supportive services. So this year we have a partnership with BetterHelp, where we're able to offer all of the young people in the program counseling support, up to 4 free live sessions, themselves and their parents, and a host of other services. I could go on and on, but what's important to know is that we focus on whole person support, right? And you ask why it's important to hear from students like Azaria. The reason why it's important to hear from students like Azaria is because we often create programs without young people being at the table, right? And so one of the things that we did during our SOAR program is that we hosted focus groups and held surveys also with the young people about what did they need, about what did they want to see as a part of the program. And as a result, the highest number of youth who access our drop-in center has been word of mouth, right? When there was a young person that, a few young people that Azaria knew that she recommended to the Detroit Phoenix Center, because that peer-to-peer support, statistics show that that is a way that we can identify young people. Jennifer mentioned a very important point. If the young person is not identified, then we can't support them. So it's important for identification and so that we can hear directly from them to elevate their experiences and to elevate their voices as we provide services that are efficient and effective.
Okay, thank you. I'm also wondering, how do you guys communicate, or is there much communication between your center and the local schools, and how, how important it is and how we can do that better?
Yes, absolutely. So it's been definitely an interesting journey as we have tried to pan out different relationships with various schools. Just last year, in the wake of a pandemic, we were able to firm up an official partnership with the Homeless and Foster Care Education Department of Detroit Public Schools Community District, working very closely with Michelle Parker and her team over there, trying to, flush out a referral system and then also supportive-based programming through DPC and DPSCD. So we're constantly evolving and strengthening that relationship, but it's that intentionality that got us, definitely to this point. Another partnership that worked really well was thanks to the young people, we have a youth action board. We asked them what type of support that they need in high school, and in partnership with the local charter school, they built out a food pantry and a hygiene closet in a local high school. And it was right at the peak of the pandemic. And right when it happened, the counselor reached out and said, oh my goodness, I don't know what we would have done had that food pantry and hygiene closet not been there. Everything was wiped out in a matter of minutes, just in the wake of the pandemic. So we're always looking for opportunities to be able to utilize service provision that young people elevate. And then also we were able to use that as a tool for outreach and engagement, where some of those young people also frequent the Detroit Phoenix Center and visit our drop-in center. So those are some ways that we have partnered with schools, and we continue to do so through education, through outreach, and through service provision.
Okay, thank you so much, Courtney. I want to pass it over to Iranetta to talk a little bit about the landscape in the Detroit School District. As Jennifer laid out, there is a serious issue with under-identification of students, but I know that the district has made a lot of progress over the last 5 years in identifying more students. So Iranetta, can you kind of talk about like what the district has done and where you guys are right now?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for having us on today. And Azaria, thank you so much for coming on to share your story. We really have been intentional about looking at how we could better support students that are in experiencing housing insecurity. When we came to the district with this administration in 2017-18, and to hear Jennifer reference the 2% at that time in the district with about 47,000 students, we had identified about 600 of them at that time that were homeless. And we knew, knowing the statistics in the city, knowing some of the poverty levels in the city, that could not be even close to accurate. So we really became intentional about it. We identified points of contact in each one of our schools. It's really been important over the course of the last several years to educate all of our staff about homelessness and what it means, what it is, and what it's not, and to really work with those that are supporting our students around the stigma, building a relationship with our area locations where, if their students or if their families that come in and those families are homeless, that there is connectivity between us and the shelters. At the end of last school year, in the middle of the pandemic, at the end of the school year, at that time, we had identified about 1,900 students. And so that gets us a little closer to that about 5% that you think about But now that we've started school again, and we pull the data every week because things change, with students and their situations and families and their situations. And so right now we're at about 1,700 students. And I think that's relevant because at the end of last school year in the pandemic, we ended at a little over 1,900. And right now, with barely a month of school in, we're already at about a little over 1,700 students that have been identified. And identification for us starts over every year because we really cannot make assumptions that there have not been things that have changed. So we continue to work through our homeless team. Courtney referenced Michelle Parker, who is our assistant director that runs the team. But another thing that we did in the district is we also identified additional individuals to work with Michelle. So she's no longer a person of one that's responsible for doing the work, but really two additional individuals that are assigned to schools, that go out to schools to offer support. Our attendance agents really are one of our main points of contact as well, because they're going to homes, they're visiting homes, and we do find that a lot of times one of the first indicators of homelessness is attendance or late. So students are coming late to school or they're late being picked up. And the more questions you begin to ask, the more information you find. I think one other thing that I would also like to share is the importance of every child in every school having some adult in the school that they feel comfortable having a conversation with, and trying to make certain that in every one of our schools, those individuals are available. So there's someone to ask questions, not from the standpoint of prying, but from the standpoint of trying to assist. We find that there are some students, like I heard the young lady share in the movie excerpt that we just saw, about the question from the younger. And a lot of times students are afraid, not necessarily afraid with the fact that they're homeless, but afraid of what will happen to me and my family if someone really finds out. And, will I get taken, especially with younger children as well, will I get taken away from my parents? Am I going to be able to continue to be with my siblings? So we really have to make sure that we are cognizant of that, that we are open and honest with our team members on our staff across the board, so that everyone really knows how you're collecting information and also how you're putting children in a situation where they're comfortable having conversations. So our training has expanded. Initially, you start thinking about school counselors or assistant principals or attendance agents. We believe that training is important for everyone. Awareness is important for everyone, from our teachers to our custodians, to our cafeteria workers, to our noon hour assistants. Everyone needs to be empowered with the right language so that they're communicating with our children and getting additional information from them.
And what are next steps for the district? You talked about, obviously, you want to get to that 5% number. So what needs to happen in order to get there?
I think three things. I think the first, we need to continue what we've already started. And that is really the level of communication that we have with our schools around helping them to understand and identifying students that are homeless. I think the second, and much like you mentioned with Azaria, is making sure that our families know where they can go to get assistance, who they can call. What can we do? We've really done a lot as a district with putting information on our website or trying to make it as less burdensome as possible. So we have QR codes that can be used. We have a telephone number that you can call. We put the application online so you don't have to physically go to a location to try to get assistance. And so our team does the follow-up. I think the third, and I said three, but there may be four. I think the third is to continue our partnerships with the city so that as information is available and they know that we have a universal application that we use with them. So as families are being identified as homeless or that information comes to us so that we do the outreach to that. Continuing the contact that we have with our partners around the community, the Phoenix Center, for example, so that there is a two-way kind of communication so that we're really working collectively. We have our team members that attend the system of care, all of these systems of care meetings, as well as the connection with all of our foster care programs, as well as going to our shelters. And I think the fifth, I know I said I keep going, right? But the fifth is making our information as available as possible in as many spaces as possible. So we go out and do the visits, but having information, having flyers, we have flyers for our department, making those available in every possible location. So not just in the shelters or not just in, in the churches, but making them available across the community in spaces where you otherwise would not necessarily expect to see us there. So we've done a lot of work in those spaces, but we have more work to do. To Courtney's point, I believe, or I think that was Courtney that shared earlier about resources. One of the things that we've also done in the district is we've established a food pantry. We've established a clothing closet. We've established a hygiene closet so that families, not only once we identify, it's more than just identifying that you're homeless, but really helping them to understand what are the services and resources that we are providing to you to then assist so that we're able to do as much as we can on our end to help our children as they're maneuvering through the system.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that really broad, very specific explanation of what the district has done. That was really helpful. I want to turn it over to Terry now to talk a little bit about Covenant House Academies, and they were highlighted in the report that Poverty Solutions did, and as a school that is doing really strong things to help identify students. And so I'm hoping Terry can talk a little bit about the work that you guys do and how you work with local community centers.
Sure. First of all, thanks to everybody else. It's great to hear so many people, especially in the Detroit Public Schools. When I worked in Hamtramck schools, I worked with the homeless liaison department in Detroit Public Schools, and it sounds like, Iranetta, you really expanded that office's role, which is great to hear. In spite of that, Covenant House Academy sort of fills this really critical niche. Covenant House originally was a youth shelter for runaways in New York City that started in the late 60s, early 70s. Kids would run away from home for any number of reasons: abusive home, maybe there were gender identity issues and they got kicked out. Maybe there was just nobody to take care of them. They would find their way to New York City and they would be taken advantage of. They were easy prey by pimps and drug dealers and other people who would take advantage of these vulnerable young people. And over the years, Covenant House expanded. They now have 27 different locations, 17 in the US and then 10 around the world, mostly in South America. Covenant House Academy is separate, but very closely aligned with the mission of Covenant House. And we began more than 10 years ago as an offshoot to provide educational opportunities for kids that were staying at Covenant House of Michigan here in Detroit, which is located on Martin Luther King, right near I-96. So the original intent of our schools was to service the kids that were staying in the shelter. But as several people have mentioned, homelessness isn't always staying in a shelter, right? It can be bouncing around. We have so many kids in our schools that couch surf. It's almost, okay, not where do you live, but where are you staying tonight is the question. We have other kids who are supporting themselves. We have kids who, as Azaria was talking about, going without utilities. We know for a fact that we had several families that were going through that, and a lot of kids that do, or they bounce from relative to relative. That's one of the reasons, for example, during the pandemic, that we never shut down. After the first spring, all of last year, we stayed open at least 4 days a week because some of our kids simply needed a warm place to go and a place where they could get food. So we try and meet, I think if I were to organize it into 3 buckets, it would be the immediate physical need, the long-term physical need, and then the emotional and academic needs of students. So on the short-term physical, make sure we have breakfast and lunch. Like several people mentioned, we always keep hygiene items. We keep coats handy. We have spare clothes. But we've also been trying to expand that role. So all 3 of our schools in Detroit, what we would love to have is a showering facility, a laundry facility, and close access to a childcare facility. We're not there yet, but 2 of our 3 schools have showers. By the winter, all 3 of our schools will have a washer and dryer where a student can bring in their clothes. because nobody wants to come to school and be embarrassed about what they look like or what they might smell like. And so we can do that discreetly. We also have, like I said, anytime we can gather up some coats or some clothes, we keep them handy. We keep, whenever we get donated suits, we keep them. A lot of our students are working or working full time, so we want them to have something that they can wear to an interview. But I think in the short term, in addition to providing safety and warmth, access to childcare, shower, laundry, food, we do some other things. We have an interventionist, we call it a student interventionist in each of our buildings. Their job is to step in when a family or a student are in crisis, and that might mean getting them medical care, getting them to a clinic, getting them counseling, getting them to resources. That could be food. A lot of times it's getting an identification, right? If you've been evicted from your home, very often one of the first things that you miss that you didn't think about was a driver's license or a birth certificate or a health record or something like that. So we have these interventionists to help with those immediate needs. We also try to help a lot with bus tickets. And not only bus tickets, that's required by the McKinney-Vento Act, but we also try to go beyond that to using 31-day passes so that our students can not only come to school, but they can get to their job. And if they're moving around, they can get to wherever it is they're able to stay. Those are all sort of the short-term things that we try to do, but we also try to meet some of the long-term things, getting them into trade programs when they graduate or long-term shelter. For example, we always have some of our students at Covenant House of Michigan in the shelter, and it's a wonderful 2-year program. So that's a good solution for students that are on their own. But then we also have this other long-term mission for us, and it's similar to what others have mentioned, right? We think in the long term, the best thing we can do for our students is 2 things, really. One, give them a place where they can be cared for, where it's safe, where they always know they can come back. But then also help them get a high school diploma so they can move on, whether it's to get a job, join the military, go to community college, go to a 4-year university, whatever that might be. And so our academic program is built around the needs of kids that are dealing with all kinds of instability. Certainly homeless, the experience of being in unstable housing, but anybody who's dealing with instability. So for example, 35% of our students have attended at least 4 previous high schools before they come to us, which I find incredibly scary, right? Changing high school once is terrifying to most kids. So we try to give a lot of flexibility. We have an online curriculum, which gives us the ability to plug the gaps that students have had. For example, they might have been doing great in freshman year and great in sophomore year until their family got evicted, and then they all of a sudden missed half of a year of school. Our curriculum is designed so that they can target just that half year, get those credits back, and move on to graduation. We also have smaller class sizes. Our classes can be done online. So right now, roughly 19% of our students are working full-time jobs. And so they're able to work weekends and nights. If they want to do their math work at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're welcome to do that. Not encouraged to call for help at 2 o'clock in the morning with their teacher, but if they send that teacher a message, the teacher will call them later in the day and work with them that way. And then we do offer off-hours tutoring. So we'll have a teacher available maybe from 5 to 7 p.m. so that somebody can log in, or in a few cases, we've had students paired with a teacher and they negotiate their own times. So I'll see the time logs and the teacher and the student were working at midnight after the student got off their second shift. We need to do more of that, right? These are all great ideas, but we need to do them on a more on a broader basis, I should say. And then also what we've been working on a lot the last 2 years is trying to provide 2 things. One, on the academic end, more work for skill gaps that maybe have been missed, especially when students have been out of school. So really targeting their areas for growth. But then also working with that, trying to make our school as flexible as it is with the computerized curriculum, that can get a little impersonal. And so we've been trying to find that balance between the flexibility that a computerized curriculum offers and really having more fun human experiences, more activities after school, kind of a smaller scale version of what the Phoenix Center was describing, right? So that it's more than just a school, it's seen as a home base really for kids. And then I would say the last thing that we've been really trying to do is to provide more and more mental health services. So all of our staff have been trained in what's called trauma-informed schools to make sure that they can be empathetic and supportive to students. And we made a financial commitment 3 years ago to have a full-time social worker in each of our buildings. We only have about 150 students in a building, so that was a big commitment on our part. All of that added together, what we hope we're doing is giving kids short-term support and an opportunity for long-term success. We still have plenty of work to be done. I think everybody on the panel would agree with that, but that's what we try to do, at least at Covenant House Academy.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate that. I'm going to ask a couple of really general questions, and then hopefully we can move on to audience questions. I think one of the more difficult parts of identifying students who are homeless is knowing that, looking for the right signs, knowing what to look for. And I'd love for a few of you to address this, and particularly I would love Azaria to address this, because I think she might be able to provide some insight from a student's perspective on what adults in schools can be looking for.
Yes, I think this is really important because in school, I feel like children are very much different, okay? You could have a very bad experience or situation at home, but in school, most children would like to be seen different because maybe they are different. Like for me personally, I know who I am at home and who I am at school are two different people because I just like to keep it separate. I like to be more professional at school. So even though all my peers and my teacher may see me as a very smart child who's got her life going, she's going on the right track, she's going to college, she has it all figured out. When in reality, I could be struggling, I could be going through 100 different missing assignments. Nobody knows, but it's because of the appearance I give off, because of what I let them see. And I think for teachers, a lot of the time that's what they only see. They only see the student that's in school. They don't even try to dig deeper and build a relationship with their students and really see how their life is going. I have a few teachers that really care how the student is doing in school and out of school, because I know a lot of teachers, once the child is out of school, that's it. They don't care or anything, and I don't think that's okay, because a lot of the stuff that happens to students happens out of school. That's where they get into fights, that's where they go home to their abusive families, or they could be having depression. It's all out of school. And if you truly care enough about your students and their education, then you would look into it. You could see obvious signs. Like I know as far as homeless or housing security, some easy ways to tell that a child may be dealing with some of these is if maybe if they're repeatedly wearing maybe the same outfit over and over again, or if you see them secluded in an area by themselves. I know for me, some easy ways that, but even then, youth are very good at hiding it, because they're hiding it from not only the world, but from themselves. Because even if the youth is struggling at home, they're trying to erase that part of themselves and build a new character at school so that they're not judged, so that they're not looked at wrongly, so that their family isn't criticized, so that no eyes are being turned towards them. So they're putting on a mask and they're doing their best to show that they're fine and that nothing is wrong at home. And as I know a lot of teachers are really putting a lot of pressure on students, especially once you hit junior year and senior year. There is so much pressure on students' shoulders to do good in school, to graduate, to do great, to do all the homework assignments on time. And especially if you play a sport or if you're in some extracurricular activity and now your coach is pushing you just as hard, and if you don't do it, now you're off the team. Now you're failed. And that can really lower a student's mental health. so far down, because not only are they trying to just make sure they get a warm night's sleep at home or they have a place to sleep, but now they're worrying about if they're going to still be on the basketball team and get to go to this game that they've been dreaming about all year. And they can't even do that just because they can't keep their uniform clean because there's no washer and dryer, or they can't wash up because there's no hot water at home. So they're struggling to think about what they're going to do for themselves, and while also put on this great image at school. And I think as teachers, most teachers, to make it easier, it's not necessary to put so much pressure on students. And I do believe that being a little easier, we understand that, school is a priority, and but life is a bigger priority. Making sure I'm okay and that I'm getting a good night's sleep and I'm able to shower, or I'm able to just go get a cup of water if I need to. That's way more important than making sure I've turned in my assignment. And I feel like that's for everybody, because at the end of the day, you can go home and you can lay in your bed and maybe grade students' work, but that child has to, stay on the streets that night. Or not everybody is lucky enough to have friends to go stay with or family to go stay with. And sometimes they're in an abusive household and they literally have nowhere else to go. So patience is really key with youth. You cannot force the truth out of them. You cannot go try to, are you homeless? And this and that. You cannot bribe it out of them. You just really have to build that bond and that relationship with the child to the point where they're comfortable enough to speak with you. Because when I first met Ms. Courtney, I couldn't speak about my story. I could not say it. I cried every time I thought about it because it really was emotional to me. And when I really got to know Ms. Courtney, and she just was one of the kindest people I know, because I met a lot of kind people who only want to hear your story to benefit them. And that's sad. But Ms. Courtney was she was so nice. She was kind. She really listened to me. She gave me opportunities like this to use my voice. And that is the biggest help you could give a youth in that situation, is to let them use their voice. Because a lot of times our voices are quieted, it's shushed. Nobody wants to hear us because they think they know what's good for us. So just giving the chance to literally use our voice and be listened to is the biggest help that any adult can give to a youth in any situation.
That was great. I mean, just a lot of really really important insight in your answer. I really appreciate that, Azaria. I'm going to move on to the next question. And I'm curious, there are a lot of educators in the audience today, and for those wondering, what should I do if a child comes to me and says, I'm experiencing, homelessness, or they're having difficulties at home. Maybe Iranetta and Terrence can handle this.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, Azaria, thank you for sharing. So I think the first is if a child is comfortable enough, and it goes back to what Azaria shared around relationships. Relationships are so important. If they are comfortable enough to share whatever the situation is, I think the first thing that the adult has to do is reassure them that they are going to find support for them. Because if they're sharing at the point that they voluntarily share, they're wanting and they're ready to receive assistance. And so it's really important for us to connect with, now you've given us the information, or now you've shared this information, it is our responsibility to do something with that information that is then going to actually assist. So I think that's the first thing. The second, it's really important to know the resources that are available within the school district and within the community. And if it's not the individual that knows, they know in the school who has the information, or at the school district level, who they can make contact with. So for example, in our district, We have a point of contact in every one of our schools. And then we also have an office of homelessness and foster care, so that if the information is not at the school level, we have, school counselors in every one of our school. Most of our schools have school social workers as well. If not, there's a social worker that is assigned to that school. We have moved forward with mental health support in all of our schools across the district. So if those individuals collectively at the school site as that care team, if they don't have the information, knowing where you can get the information from. I think the third thing that's really important is to make sure that there's follow-up. So one of the most challenging things is for a child to share the information with the adult, and then nothing else happens with it. Because then many of them begin to feel, I knew nothing would happen. Or this is another situation where something has failed me. So it's really important that we connect, that we take the information that they share about, again, whichever situation. We're talking about homelessness now, or housing insecurity, but you reference a lot of other concerns that come up in school as well. We have to do something with the information and then follow up so that the child knows that they can count on us to do that and to be there and available for them.
I would echo what Iranetta said. Just one point of emphasis. I think every teacher in every school should know who the homeless liaison is for their school. By law, that's a position that's required of every school district under the McKinney-Vento Act. Knowing who that person is the first step. Like Iranetta said, reassure the student, make sure you follow up with them. You're the one that the student trusted, right? But you're not necessarily the expert, and you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. Every district should have at least one person, or in a larger district, multiple people who know where to get housing, who know where to get help with utilities, who know where to get different resources. So I think the number one thing is to know who that person is, and then tell the young person, look, I'm going to help you, but I'm not the expert. I'm going to find somebody who does, but I'm going to be with you the whole way. Kind of like Ms. Wright was saying, right? That I'm here, but I also have to bring in reinforcements. But just knowing who that homeless liaison, I think, is critical. For that teacher to send an email or give a call and say, I know exactly who we need to call in for this, is really huge.
I think the other thing that I would also add, Lori, is that one of the things that we've done that I think has helped across the board is having a resource guide that is available at the school level, and reviewing that often and making updates, because we also know that several agents, there may be an agency this month, but 3 months from now, it may be something different. And so really having our team to communicate and update that information often, so that those that are at the school level that need the information, they have access to it, and even the changes that happen throughout there.
Okay, great. Thank you for mentioning that. I want to try and get a few audience questions out real quick. So the first one is from Stephen. He wants to know, are there currently any accommodations made for homeless or homeless students dealing with housing insecurity when it comes to long-term suspensions and expulsions? And Jen, I know you and I have talked about this before. Maybe you can handle this question.
Sure, I feel like you're reading my mind, Stephen. So this is a great question, because currently there are not, but right now there's legislation that has been introduced in the Senate in Michigan to specifically make accommodations for homeless students. So under these bills, and I'll put the link in the chat. So, if anyone's interested in finding out more or contacting their representative, I strongly encourage you to do so. But basically, as the law stands now, there are 7 considerations that need to be taken into account, including IEP, age, race. Homelessness is not one of them. This bill would add homelessness and the impact of trauma, living situation to these considerations that a school needs not only to take, but then demonstrate how they've taken those into account, which I think is a really important piece, because if you're just checking a box saying, oh yeah, I consider that, that doesn't count. You have to really be saying, how did you take that in consideration, and what were the outcomes of that? There are also a number of other protections that are included in these bills for all students that are very important. So I'll put that link in there, but just to highlight to why that's so critical, Students who are homeless and students who are formerly homeless experience significantly higher rates of suspension and expulsion than their peers who are stably housed. And that starts really young. In the state of Michigan overall, it's, I believe, 9% of early childhood through second grade students who have ever been homeless are being suspended or expelled from school. And that's not what we want to see. That is not just. So we need to be changing these laws. And we need to be figuring out how we can better support students. So I'll put that link in the chat for everyone if you want to find out more information.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. This next question is from Mario, and it's for Azaria. His question is, what is one or two things your school could do to better support students who might be dealing with housing insecurity?
I really like this question because I've spoken to Ms. Courtney about it multiple times, and I spoke to some people at my school about it. I think the biggest thing is letting the information be out there. Because I have a friend who is currently jumping, he's staying with another friend because he was kicked out of his house. Mother passed away, and his stepdad is very verbally abusive. So he has nowhere to stay. And it is a lot of situations like this, and he didn't even know such a program like Detroit Phoenix Center even existed until I told him. He was like, oh, that sounds literally perfect, because any assistant would be great. Just to talk to somebody would be great. And I think for schools, if you would reach out to these organizations like Detroit Phoenix Center and work in partnership with them to put flyers, or just have people from Detroit Phoenix come and talk to the students and let them know that there is organizations and programs out there who help kids with these situations, and that you are not facing this alone, and you do not have to be ashamed of the situation that you are in, and that there's no judgment, and there are other people like you, because I would be there. I would love to do that. I would love to have other youth there in those situations who has overcome it, just to talk to the other youth and be like, hey, because youth always love speaking to youth. It is way easier to speak to somebody your age about a situation that you're in, that they've been in, than it is to speak to an adult about it. Even though that adult is there to help you, as a youth, sometimes you feel ashamed and you feel like the adult will judge you. But having that information in schools is the easiest way, I think, to help the students. And also just look for signs. Like I said, sometimes the signs are easy. Some students are not able to conceal that their problems are like that. So maybe if you see them lurking around the school way after hours, school is out, or if you see them coming back to school, then just ask that child and, pull them aside and just, like I said, build a relationship, build bonds. And sometimes if you have a close enough bond with a student, you can tell. You can tell if there's a day where this is like, okay, yeah, you can come with me and we just need to speak. And there's this beautiful program that can help you with anything you need. So just getting that information to the students is the easiest way, and then helping them even to access information, because sometimes they don't have phones or internet, so they can't go online, they can't look up the website or register. So helping these students get into the programs and get into those organizations would also be like big help, because like I said, sometimes, they can't access it themselves. So I think that.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Azaria. I think that gave Mario some really good suggestions. I'm going to try one more question. This one is from Alyssa. She wants to know if there is a role for there to be a relationship between the district and 36th District Court, so that the district could compare addresses of enrolled students against the addresses of new eviction filings. This would give some early information that there may be a period of homelessness happening soon. Maybe that's a question for Iranetta.
Thank you. So, there's not been as much conversation about the cross-reference of the two in terms of addresses and the evictions, to be completely honest. We have, continued relationship with 36th District around some other initiatives around attendance for students, but not as much around the cross-reference of evictions and addresses for students that might move to that. So that's information for us to take and explore to see if there would be a space for us to move forward with that information.
Okay, great. I'm going to try one more. I'm going to try and fit one more question in here. So I hope that's okay with everybody. So the question is from Michelle, and she wants to know what efforts and resources will the school district commit to ensuring continuous growth in identifying students, securing transportation in light of the nationwide driver shortage, and keeping resources available for students to be successful in their education experience. That obviously is a question directed to Iranetta, but Terry, if you want to jump in there, feel free.
So I think, thank you, and thank you for the question. I think that we have exercised our commitment to making sure that we are identifying students so that through the identification, we can level the playing field as much as we can for them to help move forward their academic improvement, their social emotional experiences, just really looking at what we can do as a district to work through the whole child commitments that we have for all students. In light of the shortages in drivers, of course, across the nation, we're experiencing that. So we've done a bit more where we could, and even not just the shortage in drivers for school buses, but where we've had opportunities, we often would use cab drivers as well to take students back and forth to provide stability. And there's equally a shortage with cab drivers as well. So we continue to provide, bus cards. We provide, gas cards. There are families that have cars as well. So we provide gas cards for them. We often provide also gas cards, not just for the transport back and forth to school, but to also assist families in going to, say, parent conferences at the school as well, so that they're really able to work through their level of engagement. And I think we continue to be committed to that through our parent and our parent academy. We offer sessions for parents that they can actually attend and get assistance. We provide computer access at our school. So if families are actually able to get to the school site, we've given them, whether it's a gas card to come or whether it's a card for DDOT, they can then use the technology that we have there to, access student information or, apply for jobs. We have families that do that as well. And so we're looking at as much as we can do on our end to make sure that we are providing resources and taking the information that's being shared with us and adapting that information. So we'll continue to do that. I heard washers and dryers. That's one of the areas that we're also focused on as a district. Some of our schools have them already, and we're looking to expand that, for students that are experiencing housing insecurity, but also other students. There are students that have a variety of needs where being able to come to a school location and wash your clothes would be something that would really be important. So we're focused and we're committed because we know that this is a population that needs our support.
Thank you. Terry, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Ditto. I agree. It's all about finding every possible way you can support people. I think for us, it's a little different because we try to provide services as if all of our students were experiencing housing instability. And that way we know we won't miss anybody. So our big challenge is, first of all, envisioning the different ways we can help and then finding the resources to make it happen, right? So that's why I said we're working on getting laundry machines in each of our buildings. We're working on getting shower facilities at each of them. So for us, it's about getting the resources and making sure we have a good plan. But that's really our sole reason for existence because we're so small. We can't do anything but make that the priority.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up here. I just want to first say thank you to our panelists. I learned a lot myself here today, and I hope that all of you guys in the audience learned a lot, from what the district and Covenant are doing, but also what programs like the Detroit Phoenix Center are doing, but more important, hearing from Jennifer about why this is so important, but then bringing it down to the level of the voices of a student, and having Azaria explain to us why this is so crucial for adults to understand the challenges that students who are experiencing homelessness are facing. So I hope everyone got a lot out of this. I want to remind you that I think we may have posted in the chat at some point a resource guide that provides a lot of resources for anyone looking for more information about this. It will be emailed to anyone who registered for this event. And also be on the lookout for a survey after you exit from this webinar. But also be on the lookout for a story that we'll probably write about this event. So go to detroit.chalkbeat.org to look for it in the next few days. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for sharing your stories.